Hello and welcome back to Who Is here on Magic Untapped. I am Barry White. Now, if you've been paying attention to the last couple of Magic the Gathering sets, the name Edgar Markov should probably ring a bell. But who is this vampiric Innistrad lord, and what's part of his backstory? Well, on this episode of Who Is, we take a look at just that here on Magic Untapped.
Who is it? Who is this?
Who is it?
Who is this?
Who is it?
Thousands of years ago on the plain of Innistrad was an aging alchemist named Edgar Markov. Fearing death from old age, he was experimenting with ways to achieve agelessness, not just for himself, but for his beloved grandson, Soren. Famine began to take hold of the land, which made Edgar even more committed to his experiments. That's when Shildengar, a powerful demon lord on the plain, convinced the human alchemist to begin experimenting with blood. Taking the demon's advice, Edgar traps one of the plane's angels and exsanguinates her. The alchemist forms a decoction from her blood and, after learning the secrets of sangromancy from Shildengar, formed a ritual that granted agelessness in those who took part in it, as well as the ability to exist on the consumption of another's blood. Quite literally, it turned Edgar and all those who took part in the ritual into vampires, a race that had previously not existed on the plane. Seeking to bestow the same boon upon Soren as he had himself, Edgar puts his grandson through the same ritual. The experience proved quite troublesome for the Markov heir. The trauma of it all caused Soren's latent planeswalker spark to ignite. Once recovered from the ordeal, the now vampiric Soren departed the plane partially in disgust of what Innistrad had become. Time and time again, however, he would return to keep an eye on the happenings there. Over the next 7,000 years or so, Edgar would grow wary of the world around him. He got in the habit of resting deep in the vaults of Markov Manor for years at a time. So many years, in fact, that he would only allow himself to awaken and venture back out into the world once so much has changed during his hibernation that it would finally seem new and exciting to him once again. Of course, the sleep wasn't always uninterrupted. Soren would, from time to time, visit his grandfather as he slept, leaving him books about the current state of Innistrad for those times that Edgar would arise. And sometimes, when the planeswalker felt he needed his grandfather's counsel, he would rouse Edgar from his slumber. The two would converse for a bit, then Edgar would resume his slumber until it was time for him to rise once again. At some point after the Eldritch events that took place on the plane wherein the visiting Eldrazi horror, Emrakul, allowed herself to be imprisoned within the Innistrad moon, Soren yet again visited the manor to seek out his grandfather for advice. This time, however, the planeswalker found Edgar's coffin was missing from the family crypt. Olivia Voldaren, a vampire lord from a rival house, had stolen it with very specific plans for Edgar, one that would join her house with that of Edgar's, so that she would be able to seize control of Innistrad by overpowering all of the other vampire families that would oppose her. Not only that, but she had also imprisoned two of the largest non-vampire threats to her plans by trapping in an enchanted key the soul of a human witch known as Catilda, as well as the angel, Sigarda, whom she planned to exsanguinate as a means to control the plane's angelic population. Using her own blood, Olivia woke the slumbering Edgar. Confused by his rousing, he was easily charmed by the Voldaren matriarch and agreed to her proposal of marriage. Soon thereafter, the couple was standing at the altar ready to marry one another before a number of invited guests from across Innistrad's vampiric houses. The exchanging of vows, however, would never be completed. As Olivia was saying her vows to Edgar, a mirthless Soren attacked her, intent on putting an end to her plans. In the attack, she dropped the key holding Catilda's spirit and the angel Sigarda. At that moment, Catilda's spirit escaped from the key. Now liberated from her prison, she then freed the imprisoned Sigarda. Vengeful, Sigarda unleashed her angelic fury, the force of her aura enough to shatter the surrounding stained glass windows, injuring or killing many of the attended wedding guests. Olivia and Edgar were spared from any major injury, and the latter fled to the manor's sanguitorium to escape the angel's wrath. There he was confronted by none other than his grandson. The two quickly came to blows, hurling both insults and attacks at one another. Soren, distracted by a flashback of his family's fall from grace and into vampirism, found himself knocked into one of the sanguine blood pits, having been bested by his grandfather. Disgusted by what he saw as Soren's naivety and wasted potential, Edgar returned to the ballroom. There, new combatants had entered the fray in the form of new uninvited guests, the planeswalkers Arlen Cord, Kaya, Chandra Nalaar, and Teferi. Edgar singled out and attacked Teferi. Very soon after, however, Soren returned to the scene and intervened. This time, the vampiric planeswalker was able to overpower his grandfather. But rather than slaying him then and there, Soren showed mercy and ordered Edgar to depart. Innistrad's progenitor of vampires did just that. He quickly located Olivia and pleaded with her to put an end to her plans. As the two argued, they are discovered by Arlen and her packmates. The two vampires then fled through one of the broken windows, Olivia dropping the Moonsliver key on their way out.
And that's the last we see of Edgar Markov, well, for now at least. Innistrad is one of Magic the Gathering's more popular planes, and there is little doubt that the game will return there at some point in the future. And when it does, there's a very good chance that Edgar Markov will be there waiting for us. Until next time, thank you very much for watching this latest episode of Who Is on Magic Untapped. I am Barry White.